Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about, does the concerned citizen or the Minutemen need a sidearm when you're carrying a long gun? That's the topic today. Now, with that, some disclaimers I want to throw out there. This is going to be part of the Minutemen Concepts video series that I'm doing. And what this is it's just opinions, and it's designed to engage in discussion and open up ideas, right? Talk back and forth, learn from each other, and explore ideas that are maybe outside of conventional military doctrine, because as a concerned citizen, you don't have the logistics base that a conventional military would have. So we're trying to tailor this towards the average person, the average concerned citizen. So with that, their opinions. If you disagree, let me know down in the comments, but have a leg to stand on. Either have some experience, have some background, be respectful. Feel free to comment down below. This is designed to engage in conversation. Also, another thing, I'm not advocating for violence. I'm not advocating that anybody does this. This is all just hypothetical, okay? So it's just an exercise, right? A mind exercise. All it is. So with that, let's go to the topic. Does the average concerned citizen or Minuteman need a sidearm when they have gear like this on? And I think that is very mission dependent, right? The mission dictates everything. So we'll talk about two types. The first type being your irregular militia. Now in the state that I'm in, the irregular militia are simply volunteers that get together, they train together, but they answer the call of the governor. So if the National Guard and local law enforcement are overwhelmed with whether it be like a tornado, a flood, civil unrest, something like that, the governor can call up on the irregular militia and they step in to support the Guard, they step in to support law enforcement, that type of stuff. Those guys are generally uniformed. It's usually ACUs or the woodland pattern BDUs, and they're going to be kitted out in something like a chest rig or a plate carrier with a long gun. And in that school of thought, that's more traditional military doctrine, right? They are logistics heavy because they're depending upon local law enforcement, the National Guard, the state government, right? They're probably going to provide them with food, maybe not up front. They may have to carry some sustainment, but they're going to get resupplied. They're going to get food, things like that. Again, that individual is expected to look and dress a certain way, and in society, that's acceptable in those scenarios. In that type of emergency, you expect to see somewhat armed individuals in uniforms. So that's what you're expecting to see. And I don't think that those guys personally need a sidearm unless they're in specialty roles where carrying a long gun wouldn't make sense. If you can carry the long gun, I would say ditch the sidearm, and here's why. In that role, if you're called up to do infantry type things, recon, patrols, maybe check out an area, right? And if you're going to expect contact, it might be from 1 to 700 meters. So we're talking like your traditional out in the woods style fight. If that's the mission set, I don't think a sidearm makes a lot of sense, because in that scenario, you are probably carrying around all of your sustainment, your sleep system, your rucksack, 3 to 4 liters of water, right? Change of clothes, maybe extra boots, batteries, NVGs, radio, any specialty equipment that your mission may dictate. That's a lot of weight, and if you've got to ruck that around for 3 or 4 days, try carrying like a full-size 1911 or a Beretta M9 or a SIG P320, Glock 1917, extra mags, lights, optics, that type of stuff. It's dead weight in my opinion. It's a lot of dead weight, because instead of carrying this, I can carry 2 of these for actually less weight. These feed that. That's more effective in literally almost every single scenario, especially if you're expecting engagement out to 700 meters. If you get in a gunfight and it's at 300 or 400 meters and that goes down, the best thing is probably immediate action. Tap rack bang or tap rack assess, depending on what generation you are. If you do that 9 out of 10 times in my experience, that's going to fix that rifle's problem. If it doesn't, guess what? You're probably with a squad or a team-sized element who's providing fire. You should be able to take cover, especially at those distances, get behind something, break out your clean rod, clear the obstruction in the barrel, pull out the piece of brass, mortar the AR, whatever you got to do, get it back into the fight. Because at the end of the day, if you're at a 300 or 400 meter engagement distance, this is pretty worthless, honestly, at those distances. And as far as CQB stuff goes, I don't think any governor or local law enforcement anywhere is going to have their regular militia clearing buildings when they know that there could be hostile threats in them. Not going to happen. They're going to save that for the law enforcement guys or the infantry units who train in the CQB stuff. Because even those guys with their training know there's a high probability they're going to get clapped when they go through a doorway. And the more doorways and rooms there are, the higher the probabilities of that happening. That stuff needs to be left to professionals. As a civilian, I don't ever see the reason to clear a building unless it's your immediate dwelling that you live in and the door gets kicked in the middle of the night. Other than that, I would not be clearing a building. I would avoid it, I would go around it, or I would burn it down before I would clear it. Just not going to happen. My life is more important than whatever's going on in there, right? You're a civilian. You don't have to answer to anybody. That's the beauty of being a civilian. So I would avoid those situations. Risk and mitigation is huge, right? And that improves everybody's chances of survival. So that's my opinion. Traditional infantryman type role that's in a non-urban environment, these don't make a lot of sense. If you're in an urban environment, maybe. If you are going to have to potentially be in close proximity to hostile engagements, yeah, having a sidearm might make more sense in that scenario. If you have a catastrophic failure, having a sidearm in that particular situation makes more sense. But by and large, I don't think that that's most people, especially that are into prepping Minutemen type stuff. I just don't think that it's a very practical utilization of this weight, especially if you're carrying around a bunch of water and sustainment. Right? In my opinion, carrying around an extra quart of water or an extra liter of water is far more valuable than carrying a sidearm. Now, school of thought type 2 is going to be your partisan or resistance fighter. And what this means is, like, think of Red Dawn, right? So you're behind enemy lines, you're operating in a hostile environment, but you need to reintegrate into society. So in that scenario, being kitted up like this probably get you killed if you go back into town, right? It's probably not a good idea. So for that type of scenario, a sidearm makes a lot more sense. Here's why. If you have to go out and recon or patrol, or you're going to harass the enemy, right? This stuff might be on you. But once you break contact, especially if it's with a superior force, this stuff gets ditched, whether that be in a last ditch effort to escape. You're just shedding gear as you go, and you've got civilians on underneath, right? Maybe you've got khaki pants and a natural colored plaid shirt or fleece or something like that. You're ditching this stuff as you go, and you have this concealed. Now you have at least something, and you can reintegrate back into society, and no one's the wiser, right? And so for that, my criteria for a sidearm is what you conceal carry every single day. If you conceal carry a full-size 1911, and I know there's plenty of you out there that do, or a Glock 17 or SIG P320 or something like that, and you do it well, and you do it all the time, then that should be your firearm of choice. If that's uncomfortable for you, and you don't do that, but you carry like a 365 or a Glock 48 or 43 or something like that, then that should be your sidearm. Because again, if you're in a role where you're using this type of gear, this doesn't make a lot of sense. But in that scenario, again, having to reintegrate back into society, and you ditch this stuff, now this makes sense to have, right? It's the same concept as concealed carry. You can't carry a policeman with you, you can't carry a Navy SEAL with you, but you can carry this if you need to protect yourself. It's the same concept. So what I do is how I dress right now. Just like this, I conceal carry this, I conceal carry an extra magazine. That's on me all the time. And then if I had to go defend the property or go on a recon or something like that, patrol, I just throw this other stuff on top of what I already have on. If I have to ditch it or stow it away, I'm used to carrying this every day anyway. It's no big deal. And this is lightweight, and there's not an excuse to carry something so small. On top of that, it's pretty effective. If you practice with these smaller size guns, you can get good. They're not as good as a full-size gun, I'll give you that. These are a lot harder to shoot than the 320 or a Glock 17 or 19, but they're easier to carry. And I spend a lot more time carrying than I do shooting or defending myself, thank the Lord. And so for me, having something that's easy to carry but still capable if I need it, that's a good balance for me. Or even something like this, right? This is a little 8-shot 22 revolver, and a lot of people gave me hate on one of the shorts I posted with this. But here's the thing, guys. I live on a farm. I carry this a lot for a few reasons. Number one, I've dispatched a lot of critters around the farm with this. We had poultry, Skunks get into poultry, raccoons get into poultry. We've got groundhogs burrowing in underneath buildings and things like that. I've dispatched a lot of critters with this. This is great, and let me tell you, it does the job just fine. Would I rather carry this if I'm worried about two-legged threats? Absolutely. Or this, or that. Sure, this may not be the first choice, but with shot placement, this has no recoil, it's accurate, and you can put multiple shots on target very rapidly, even moving targets. Like I said, those critters don't hold still most of the time when you're trying to dispatch them. You can make shots count with this. In my experience, these will absolutely do the job. Maybe not as effective as this, but I wouldn't want to get shot with the 22. And the reality is, this with a box of 50 rounds and a Speed Bees loader weighs less than one loaded AR-15 magazine. So it's not a lot of weight to carry around anyway. Again, this would be my first choice, but if you have something like this, it's super lightweight, it's accurate, and I don't want to get shot with the 22, especially when you can make headshots at 30 or 40 yards pretty quickly. I'll roll in some footage of that. These are plenty accurate. I would not want to get shot with them. And that's enough ranting about that. But again, for your partisan resistance type, behind enemy lines, fighter, yes, I think a sidearm makes sense, but it needs to be within the confines of what you're willing to conceal carry. I would love to tell you that, yeah, I'm going to rock a HSGI battle belt with an M9 and extra magazines because I shoot the M9 really well, and I'm going to have all this ammo and secondary, and I'm going to be able to ruck and run through the woods and all that. It's just not practical. For long-term operations where you're on your feet and making movement quite a bit, I want as light as possible and as efficient as possible. And for me, carrying more mags while saving space is more important than carrying the cool, more effective pistol that I may not even have to use. So concealed carry firearms for that situation, in my opinion. So just to reiterate, my personal viewpoint is I don't find the sidearm is a very practical tool, as in you're having to transition from your main rifle to the pistol to save your life. That scenario, I feel like, is the people advocating for abortion because it's going to end the mother's life. That's like 0.3% of the time, right? The odds of your main fighting rifle going down in a close proximity situation where you have to resort to your pistol is like 1 in a million. And yes, you can say, I know this Army guy or this operator or this Ranger. Okay, they are put into those positions regularly and they're trained for it. But the average civilian should not be putting themselves in that situation, especially in an SHTF situation. You should avoid those things. If you find yourself in that situation and your main rifle goes down and you have to transition to the pistol, chances are you failed somewhere along the way, whether it be your recon, your planning, your risk assessment. You had to fail somewhere along the way for that to happen, or things went really sideways and you just had bad luck. Additionally, if your rifle is going down that much or you are that worried about your primary rifle going down, buy a better quality rifle and then worry about buying a full-size handgun. Worry about the rifle first. Your handgun is what gets you to your long gun, at least in my opinion. And this is all just my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. But again, reiterating that situation, it just should not be that up front in people's mind. It's not super practical. Let me know what you guys think. Again, this is all hypothetical. It's just a thought experiment, if you will. It's designed to get you guys thinking about these type of things. Again, as a Minuteman, a concerned citizen, you don't have the logistics that all these active duty military guys or guys who have gotten out of the military that make YouTube channels had. You do not have that logistical network. So remember, you've got to carry your own sustainment, your own ammo, your own stuff, right? And if you've got a group of guys or you're going to help out your local law enforcement, figure out what things they may have you doing, because the mission will always dictate the gear that you carry. So with that, guys, if you have questions, drop them down in the comments. I'm excited to see what you guys have to say. And as always, and most importantly, stay free.